are reconvening this joint hearing of the Human Services and Health and Human Services Committees. And we are going to kind of pick up where we were, where we left off. And I believe that was, we are at the did we do the A8 or not? No, we didn't do the A8. So is there someone who was wanting to offer the A8 amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't mean to monopolize the conversation. And so I hope you see my efforts here is trying to get us even some more things to put together. And so maybe Mr. Monahan can just kind of save us the time.
Mr. Monahan?
Madam Chair, members, take me a minute to recall what this one is about.
Regional exceptions.
Right. So the first part of the amendment through 1.10 is related to the existing moratorium. No, I'm sorry, I have to look at the language.
Yeah, that's fine. Take your time.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Monahan.
My apologies. So this language is related to new language, part of a governor's proposal to implement a moratorium on new licenses for ICS settings. And the language in the amendment would require the commissioner, when implementing the moratorium, to not apply the licensing moratorium in those cases where a new license is required as a result of a change of ownership. The reason I got confused was some of the language in the amendment is actually recreated from language that is in the underlying bill. So really the new language is the language that reads, nothing in this paragraph authorizes the commissioner to deny a change of ownership license, a temporary change of ownership license, or temporary transitional license that is otherwise permissible under section 245A.043. The rest of the language in that first part is actually already in the bill. And the second part applies the same language to two other moratoria. The first is that same language applied to last year's enacted discretionary licensing moratoria. And then the last piece is a similar provision, but this time related to the governor's new proposal to not authorize new ICS settings.
Mr. Chair. Or is it Madam Chair?
Senator Abler.
Okay, you guys switched. Okay. So this just makes ownership matter. It doesn't do anything very clever except to say if there's a moratorium and I want to sell my place to you, that all things being equal, you can still get it even though there's a moratorium for anybody new. So it doesn't count as new, it just counts as changed. And all the criteria, Madam Chair, you still have to qualify and all your background checks and all that stuff. So thank you.
Senator Abler, have you, I mean, it seems like this might be something they've considered, and can you tell me whether the department is supportive of having this possibility? Because it seems to change, it does change their ability to implement a moratorium the way that they have implemented it.
Well, Madam Chair, it would only implement it would just keep people from starving out perfectly legitimate businesses that are going. So there's a whole crew back there, I don't know if any of them, or I did not talk to the department about this.
Would anyone from DHS be able to comment on? Because and I'm asking more because this sort of concept, it comes up again in similar, not exactly the same language, but this concept of change of ownership when there's a moratorium in like the A9 and the A10 and the A11. So I guess it would be helpful if we could have some feedback.
I see a volunteer coming, Madam Chair. So. Should we just call you Commissioner now? What?
Welcome, Ms. Brown.
Acting way
Thank you
cool person.
for coming forward. Do you have the A8? And then, I don't know, if you have the A9 and 10?
Madam Chair, a number of these have come forward
Senator Abler.
given the speed that this whole thing is moving. So we would have ordinarily done more working with the department, but thank you.
Ms. Graham?
Madam Chair, for the record, Christy Graham with the Department of Human Services. I have the A8 in front of me. I can try to pull up the A9, but I'm just coming from another thing, so I'm trying to orient myself to the committee's discussion at the moment. As Senator Abler mentioned, we are still reviewing these amendments. I'm not sure on the ICS section what kind of feedback that we have, but I can certainly get back to the committee. I think we definitely want to make sure that as it relates to ICS capacity in the community, this is a really important service, that kind of supported apartment model. So we would love to see that continued and make sure that people have access to that service if they need it. So we can work on technical assistance on that piece. And then, Madam Chair, were there questions around the change of ownership requirements in this language as well?
Yes, that was what I was wondering. I mean, there's a couple different paragraphs that relate to change of ownership and, whether someone can take over ownership of an existing. If you can comment on those,
Sure.
Those two provisions, I guess E and E. Ms. Graham?
Sure, Madam Chair. So we did have a policy proposal this year that would close somewhat of a loophole where someone might come on as a controlling individual, in the provider agency, and not have to go through a full change of ownership process. Controlling providers could be an owner of a company, but they could also be, someone like a compliance officer. So in some cases that change or that switch out makes sense, but for owners, we do feel that it's important that people go through the change of ownership process. One of the consequences that could occur when we're not having owners go through that whole process is we don't know who the owner is. We don't have visibility. We've seen some news stories recently about the program integrity gaps that creates. We also aren't able to go through the process of looking at that owner's compliance history in terms of other licenses that they might hold. There's sometimes, situations where they're under investigation where we might be made aware of that when they go through the change of ownership process. But if they don't do that, then we aren't able to take that full look back. We are working with the providers. We do understand some of their concerns around the current backlog and the licensing moratorium. So we are working with the providers to come to maybe some agreeable compromise language on this, Madam Chair, and we're happy to report back to the committee when we get to that place and also include you in those conversations if helpful.
Madam Chair.
Senator Abler?
Well, I think this is only saying just because there's a moratorium, you don't lose your license when you decide to sell it. I think that's the heart of this. And so I don't know how you want to handle it, but leave it in as a placeholder, and I won't hang on to it tightly if it just blows up to this and the other ones. But I think there's discussions going, and I don't think the department wants to lose good providers just because they bring in a new partner or decide to sell it, which also will actually help retain owners who actually want to do this business, and it's getting more and more challenging. So that's what I have, Madam Chair.
Is there any other discussion about the A8? Senator Fate?
An example I can think of that would be beneficial is like when in the transfer process, say there's an owner that passes away, and you would like the family members, like the son, the daughter, children, to assume ownership. I think under this current process, that would not be able to happen. So I'm just giving one of the ideas in which we're trying to assist in.
Ms. Grom, any other comments?
Madam Chair, Senator Fata, appreciate that example. Well, let's keep talking about this. And I mean, at the department, we've been talking with providers, and I don't think we would be wholly opposed to this moving forward at this moment. If the committee would be committed to working with us, we would appreciate that as well. And overall, just want to thank you all for your work on program integrity. It is a really key priority for us this session.
Mr. Chair. Senator
Thank you,
Hoffman.
Madam Chair. Mr. Chair. You want to stick around, Christy, because I think the same thematic, when we get to the essence of the content, who do I sound like? That same thematic conversation is going to be, Madam Chair, on the A9 and the A10. It all fits within that theme. So you maybe have Christy stick around with that same kind of conversation about working forward with what Senator Fatah is saying. So is that okay, Madam Chair?
That is just fine. Do you want to, no, I don't see others who want to discuss this amendment. Let's just stick with taking our roll calls, and then we know who's in support or not.
Chair Hoffman.
Aye.
Vice Chair Fata.
Yes.
Lead Rasmussen.
Yes.
Senator Abler.
Yes.
Senator Grunhagen.
Yes.
Senator May-Quade. Senator Mohammed. Senator Utke.
Yes.
Senator Wiklund.
Chair Wiklund,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mann,
No one's saying.
Lead Utke,
Yes.
Senator Abler,
Oh, aye.
Senator Bolden,
Aye.
Senator Fate,
Yes.
Senator Karan, Senator Kupek,
Yes.
Senator Liskey, Senator Port.
And with unanimously 6 yeses, HHS is in support.
Human Services got 8 yeses. We got 2 more than the HHS.
Whoa.
Glenn, you're supposed to laugh.
I'm glad you're not competitive.
Mr. Chair, would you like to offer your A9 amendment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And, Christy, do you have, or Ms. Crom, do you have the A9 in front of you as well?
Mr. Chair, yes, I do.
Awesome. So Zanya had been working, this is all stuff that had been working in and out throughout. It's the same conceptual thematic discussion that we had in the 8, only as you can see, this would say specifically is not subject to the moratorium imposed under section 245A.03, provided that change of ownership does not result in an increase in the license capacity or service scope. What are you thinking?
Mr. Chair, again, I think we just need to work on this and analyze and make sure we're okay with it. Conceptually, I think there's a lot of agreement here. I just want to make sure that we don't create any unintended consequences or, issues with our corrective action
Great.
plan or things like that.
Thank you. Sounds like that would be added to the working bill, so.
Any discussion, any other comments? Okay. So we want to go through the roll.
Chair Hoffman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fata,
Yes.
Lead Rasmussen,
Yes.
Senator Abler, Senator Grunhagen, Senator McQuaid,
Aye.
Senator Mohammed, Senator Utke, Senator Wiklund.
Yes.
Chair Wiklund,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mann, Lead Utke. Senator Abler. Senator Bolden.
Aye.
Senator Fate.
Aye.
Senator Coran. Senator Kupek.
Aye.
Senator Liskey. Senator Port.
Madam Chair, Human Services has 8 yeses and 0 nos.
Health and Human Services has 6 yeses and 0 nos. Equality, yes. And so we will carry this one forward. Senator Hoffman, do you want to speak to the A10?
Yep, so Madam Chair and Christie, the A10 is also, there's the licensing moratorium. There's some language changes. If you look at B, there's a new B starting at 1.29. That lays out to then adding subdivisions 7B, 7C, and then the rest is numbered as you see it. So there's a lot of changes in this. Do you need to, you want to?
Yeah, Mr.
Ms.
Chair, I don't know that I've seen this language before it was posted, so I'm not sure if this was in a bill or anything this session, but I do think this would make things harder for us. So is your intent with this to end the current temporary licensing moratorium?
Mr. Chair.
Madam Chair, no, the proposal just establishes that structured data-driven framework. It's look at the framework discussion within there, that's the intent. But if it doesn't read that way, then I don't want that to be a misgiving, because really when you're looking at it, that was directly informed by the events that followed that 2025, you're shaking your head, the high-risk designations, while broad program level actions were taken without the defined framework, so this lays that framework in there. I think it's good work. I think it gets into that defined framework that's missing. So.
Mr. Chair,
Ms.
so
Graham?
it looks like this is for adding new services potentially to the moratorium. I guess, yeah, we'll want to work with you on this.
Okay.
I mean, what the concerns that maybe come to mind first is we have some backlogs in our current licensure in 245D in particular, and so the current moratorium in place is helping us to keep that to get through some of that backlog and kind of manage what we have. So I just would want to make sure that what we're doing here doesn't implicate providers negatively.
Yep.
But happy to work with you in the committee and provide you further technical assistance as we get a chance to analyze this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. And that's, thank you, Ms. Crom. That's exactly what the discussion is, at looking at the framework that lists. So thank you for wanting to work on that within the next 2 weeks.
Mr. Chair, is this something that you want to have us carry forward as like officially, or do you want to work on?
No, I think, Madam Chair, if we can, let's add it. It sounds like the other three, this fits in the thematic piece on that discussion of the framework, so I think we should add it to there. And again, if Ms. Grom, when we're working on this, if it looks like it's going to impose additional costs that we don't have or additional capacity issues that we don't have, then we need to just, that's fine. So I'd like to have their eyes take a look at this. And I think you were working with Zanya on some of these in the past year, so I will follow their lead.
Members, any other comments or questions? Senator Udke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as this goes forward and you have the conversations, we just heard about the comment made about the backlog. I just had a conversation when we were over on the floor earlier today. I went out and met with a group. They are concerned about a backlog, and they're talking 4 and 5 months for their particular need. But so I think as you're doing this, keep that as part of the conversation, because these backlogs are totally unreasonable, unacceptable, and we got to figure out how to work through them, because when you have providers that are being held out that long, and I mean, we got to do better. So I just asked that that be part of your conversation.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Udke, absolutely. I think you and I have both, we paying attention to that capacity piece, and then we're the first up here going, why didn't you get it done, Christy Graham and Elise Bailey? So point well taken, point well established, and absolutely we'll take the lead on where you're going with that. I do not want to put us in where we were, instead of 60 days on 245D, all of a sudden it was 24 months, and all you just kept hearing from us, pressure, 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 right? And we don't want to do. There's a song about that, though. I think pressure. You got it, Senator EMQ. What did I don't even know the name of it. So
Senator Fate.
he doesn't know it either.
I was just about to sing it, Mr. Chair, but thank you so much. I was going to bring up the backlog issue as well, but Senator Udke articulated it better than I can. A second piece to this, I was looking at subdivision 7B around the refunds following implementation of a moratorium. I would just suggest, like, rather than having like another application process that has to get reviewed, is there a way it can just be automatic and just automatically refund people and call it a day?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Grom.
Madam Chair, Senator Fata, apologies. I'm not sure. I mean, in terms of, Mr. Chair, you had asked about a cost. I mean, I would assume this would add a cost. I'm not sure how we would get access to the data in this amendment either. But happy to continue to work with you. I think this would probably be something that we would have quite a fair amount of technical assistance on to be able to enact
Mr. Monahan.
quickly.
Madam Chair, Senator Fate, in order to draft this new language, I needed to reorganize it slightly. The language you're pointing to as new subdivision 7B is actually just a recodification of the stricken paragraph B on page 1. It's not a new policy.
Thank you, Mr. Monahan.
Senator
can-
Abler. Oh, Senator Fate, sorry. I didn't know you were.
So can the new policy be that it's automatic? And then
Mr. Monahan, I don't know if was that a question? Okay. Senator Abler.
Madam Chair, I'm just continually impressed with our staff. Mr. Monahan in particular, I recodify. So it's always just nice to see him tidy up stuff. What we're talking about, just licensing and so on, and you're here to come up with 2 or 3 comments. Ms. Grom, can you tell me how hard it is to get a provider number once you've gotten all done? Because I've gotten a few requests. I sent one off to you. And why is it hard to give them just a number? Can you comment about that? It seems like it's like a snag that, like, finally we've made it, and no, we're not there yet. Thanks.
Ms. Grom.
Madam Chair, Senator Abler, the program area that issues UMPI numbers or NPIs is under an extreme amount of stress, an unprecedented amount of stress. The federal government is requiring us to revalidate 5,500 providers in the course of 3 months, which would usually occur over the course of 3 years. So I think that the recent issues that I know you're not the only one that I've heard about, so I understand that this is a stressful thing for providers, but we are literally stretched extremely thin right now in ways that we never have been, so I think that's the issue. I hope that we can get through this this particular moment in time and move forward and get all of the needs resolved as quickly as possible.
Well, thanks. And not to belabor, Madam Chair, but just,
Senator Abler.
don't you just like, is it a complicated process to get the number? I mean, you've done everything else. You got this stack of paperwork and approvals, and now you just need the number. And so is it, do you have to get it from somewhere? Or, I mean, do you know offhand how hard it is on each case?
Ms. Graham?
Madam Chair, Senator Abler, no, I could not describe the level of effort for that particular task. I think when you have a sea of work that program area is under, every little distraction, many, inquiries from legislators, a new UMPI number, everything kind of piles up. And so I think that's more the issue than the level of effort that it would take. But I will say that we have a team of people that are here at the agency because they want to be and they really care about people as much as you and I do. And so if it were simple, I feel deep in my heart that they would be doing that more quickly. But I'm happy to bring that back to our team and share your
Thanks, Senator. I know Miss
concerns.
Miss Bailey is good at math. Maybe she could or some kids that are good at random number generators. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about the A10? Okay, seeing none, Ms. You can go ahead and take the roll.
Chair Hoffman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fata,
Aye.
Lead Rasmussen,
No.
Senator Abler. Yes. Senator Gruenhagen. No. Senator McQuaid. Aye. Senator Mohammed. Aye. Senator Utke. Aye. Senator Wiklund.
No.
Chair Wiklund.
No.
Vice Chair Mann. Lead Utke.
Aye.
Senator Abler.
Yes.
Senator Bolden.
No.
Senator Fate.
Aye.
Senator Curran. Senator Kupek.
Aye.
Senator Liskey. Senator Port.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Chair.
thank you. I believe Senator Mohammed wanted to, oh, you're good? All right, I have 6 yeas and 3 nays.
Mr. Chair, HHS 4 yeses, 3 noes, and so we will move your proposal forward.
You didn't pay for a landslide, Mr.
Yeah, that's all you get.
Madam Chair,
Senator
if
Ho-
I can just add to those, the 8, 9, and 10, if the, going into follow-up, just to make sure the department, again, capacity conversation that you heard from Senator Utke, if it, there's some points in there that are well worth the integrity side of it, but it's a lot when I was looking at that. So thank you for your openness on that, Madam Chair and Ms. Crum.
And Senator Hoffman, is the A11 also yours, or is that somebody else's?
8, 9, 10, 11, yes, that fits in the same 11, hold on. Yes, that is Zanya, that came from Zanya Haru to, Mr. Monahan, did you incorporate these amendments from Ms. Harut? I'm confused on the 11 and the 10. I want to go backwards. Could you clarify the 11 for me, please, just so I can?
Mr. Monahan?
Madam Chair, Senator Hoffman, the A11 is designed to provide some standards by which the commissioner must adhere when making a designation of a provider type program area, designating those things as moderate or high risk. That is an authority the commissioner already has under statute. The language here is designed to provide some public transparency and criteria about exactly how that designation is made.
Mr. Chair, did you have more you wanted to say about this?
No, I don't, Madam Chair. It is what it is. Christie, as you're looking at that,
Ms. Grom?
Madam Chair, and Chair Hoffman, I guess I would have some reservations and concerns about this. I haven't seen this before. We have federal requirements around this, and we are in a, I don't know if Senator Gruenhagen is here. We've got a lot hinging on making sure we're complying with federal requirements right now in our corrective action plan. So I guess I would be uncomfortable with this as it is, and
Okay.
would love to work with Zania more if this is from her.
it is from her. So I think I'll withdraw the A11 amendment in honor of Senator Gruenhagen, who reminds us, don't want to lose that $500 million, right, Glenn? You keep repeating that. So Madam Chair, I withdraw the A11.
Okay, thank you. In the A12 is, I'm not sure who's, Senator Fate,
Yes.
is that yours?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'd like to offer the A12, and it's around the remote supports provision that's in the bill. This is something I got from some of the advocates, and these are services that allow individuals to be in their home without the need for 24-hour staff that support independence and autonomy. And so remote supports and monitoring technology is safe, is cost-effective, and it is person-centered. And so it does two things. First, it removes the sections from the bill that repeal remote supports and maintains this important service option for the people with disabilities. Secondly, it adds new language into the statute that oversees remote overnight supervision in a community residential setting, requiring that providers ensure that any third-party entity that is contacted to provide monitoring and oversight of the home maintains ratios to ensure that each individual's emergency maximum response time is able to be met. So this is just another important measure that we can put in place to ensure that there is program integrity and safety while maintaining this important service option. And so I've gotten over the weekend a lot of emails and folks reaching out about their concerns around the removal of the program. And so we have folks from, I think, ARM here that can also speak to that if needed.
Ms. Grom, do you have the A12 to look at?
Madam Chair, I do have the A12. This would undermine the governor's position on remote supports, and we're seeing a lot of issues in terms of documenting that those services are appropriate and a variety of program integrity concerns. So I also believe this is perhaps a part of other requirements in our program integrity work. So I guess we would have concerns with removing that from the bill.
Now I know where you're going. This is the removal of the remote, okay. Madam Chair. We fought, Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Chair.
thank you, Madam Chair. We fought for years to allow remote services because it made no sense. If I lived in Glencoe, Minnesota, and I had services from St. Louis County up there by the northern border, I would have to travel back to St. Louis County in order to get authorized on service. Remember that conversation? It was like it was yesterday. You were in the other body, Glenn. And so that conversation we had was like, well, wait a minute. What about night supervision and remote services? Because there are some folks that would do. I don't want us to lose that aspect because it's not, to me, it's not fully accessible. and inclusive when you just eliminate that piece. There's got to be, and I think Senator Fata is spot on that correction. Now I know what you're talking about, because there is another provision too that I think we need to also, this committee I don't want to lose that piece. So this is where I disagree with the governor on that. So, Madam Chair, I'm a yay for Senator Fata's amendment. We should run this through. Senator Utke pointed his finger up.
Oh, Senator Utke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, I'll back both Senator Hoffman and Senator Fate. We don't want to lose this. And we've heard the comment made this morning about, you know, we have good providers, but they never get brought into the conversation. And I think here is where the governor's bill, they took a hatchet to something they didn't understand, and the need for it that's out there. So this was a good deal, like Senator Fate said. This weekend there was a lot of, once this thing got posted, a lot of interest in that, and we got to make sure we don't lose it. You know, all these things should be looked at, and if they can be adjusted or whatever, okay, we can do that. But when they just take a hatchet to something, that's the wrong way to approach it. And so, thank you. This needs to stay.
Any other comments? Senator Abler?
Well, I don't, just to pile on, but the remote services is the future. We are running out of human beings. We're short 50,000 workers in the industry, Madam Chair, and you know that. And people are actually, Mary T. was trying to do that, and it was made so difficult by all the rules that they gave up on it. They had apartments that they were renting and technology and all that. So this is something, to lose this would be to take a great step backwards. Thank you.
I don't see any other comments or questions. I do think that if it is the future, I think we want to get it right, and we want to make sure that the program integrity concerns are addressed. And so I'm okay with, moving this forward. But I do want to make sure that I understand, the reasons that the governor brought forward the proposal and what the impact would be on our ability to manage and provide program integrity.
Madam Chair. So
Senator Abler.
Thank you for that. And I think the answer here would be this would be a good place to have the providers of those sit down and decide how to run off the people that are the crooks. And as well as the ICS, which would be my suggestion on that part as well. And that's a resource that we have left untapped. And I think at the end, you'll have something really good. You'll have hardly any hearings about harm, and only success stories about how the bad people got ran off while we served. So thank you.
Ms.
Chair Hoffman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fata,
Yep.
Lead Rasmussen,
Rasmussen, no.
Senator Abler,
Yes.
Senator Gruenhagen,
Aye.
Senator McQuaid,
Aye.
Senator Mohammed,
Aye.
Senator Utke,
Aye.
Senator Wiklund.
Aye.
Chair Wiklund,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mann, Lead Utke,
Aye.
Senator Abler, Senator Bolden. Aye. Senator Fate,
Aye.
Senator Coran, Senator Kupek,
Yes.
Senator Liskey, Senator Port.
Aye. That's what I told you I'm gonna do. Cancel.
I got 8-1, Madam Chair.
HHS says 7-0.
Higher percentage on HHS, 8-1, Madam Chair. So we're moving forward with that. Nice job. Nice catch, Fata.
Next, we have the A13 amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Abler.
Yeah, and Mr. Monahan provided this, which I appreciate. And actually, this is all the things that are either not in the bill or that are in the bill with different wording, including the 90-day thing, which we don't have to discuss again unless you want to. And so the proper way to look at this would be to kind of go by sections. There's a number of them, but And we can do it kind of quick, or I don't know, I don't want to drag it out too long, but for instance, so I'll move the A13, and then if you look at section 12, which is on page 1, it inserts, it just randomly sticks it in the bill, where that we would, as they give a report, they'd also would talk about the site visits. Unannounced site visits, that's very interesting to us, so that's something that I think is friendly that, and if Ms. Brown wants to comment along the way, a lot of this stuff we've already gotten TA on, and so I think that some of these are sorted out at least in terms of, satisfaction to the department, at least to an extent. I don't think the TA has been exhaustive, but, so that's the first section. So maybe we just talk about, because each item is a different idea, so.
Okay, so can you tell us what lines are you talking about as the
1.4 to
first
1.11.
section?
On page 1.
Members, do you have any questions about that section?
And if Ms. Graham wants to comment, that'd be fine too, so I appreciate that.
Ms.
None of
Graham?
this should be new to her.
I don't know if you have a
Madam
comment.
Chair, are we on the A14?
The
A13.
A13, okay.
Yeah.
Do you want a hard copy?
I have it pulled up, Senator.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this a bill that we've seen before? This looks vaguely familiar.
Madam Chair?
Senator Abler.
This is fragments of the A18 amendment. And so the A18 came out of the A10, came out of discussions, and a lot of behind-the-scenes dialogue with a raft of people. This whole thing came out of Representative Hicks, some of Zainab's stuff, some of my stuff, some of the provider's stuff, some of the department stuff, and we were trying to I tried to put a collage of everything together that we had without any judgment if we liked it, if I liked it or not, just that it would be consolidated. And so this is what got left either out of the bill or got reworded in the bill, with the exception of the 90 days, which is still in here, which we already discussed this morning, which I won't discuss again.
Ms. Graham, did you have any comments on the first section about the annual report changes?
Madam Chair, sorry, I'm just looking at it now. I don't have comment. I can get back to you. These were large amendments that we've been trying to review over the weekend, and I don't have full analysis on all of it, and I don't want to provide something inappropriate.
Yeah, that's fine. Senator Abler, did you want to continue?
I do, yeah. And so I'll need some help. I got to phone a friend on this one. So this changes the words. This is already in the bill in a format. And Mr. Monahan can describe the differences. I think that some of this has to do with TA and maybe just improved language. But, sorry, Liam. So this would actually delete some sections and reinsert some sections. And this is on page 1.13 and goes all the way to (810).
Mr. Monahan, is there any way you can summarize, like, this is removing, I mean, it's removing sections from the bill and replacing them with these sections. Are you familiar with these and how they differ from what is being removed or would be removed?
Madam Chair, members, it would be difficult for me in this particular section, the provider enrollment piece, to really lay out the differences between what is in the underlying proposal and what is in here. I will mention that we started with a simple recodification, and the underlying bill in these sections has very few policy changes. They were in the index. I think it was only 4. The language from the A18 was in a much earlier version of 4222. It hasn't changed much over time. It is largely based on a proposal from the House. It has far more policy changes in it than is in the proposal in front of the Joint Committee today. It has a whole section regarding required verification checks that are not in the underlying bill, at least in this format. It has greatly expanded language related to required fingerprints. It has additional language related to enrolling a service location. It has modified language related to required surety bonds. It has expanded language about site visits. It has a similar compliance program. It has new language about how to deal with incomplete provider enrollment applications. It has expanded language about provider revalidation procedures. It has enhanced language about suspending billing for lack of documentation, has expanded language about the authority of the commissioner to deny or terminate enrollment. So those are with respect to the provider enrollment. There are a lot of changes, and without a proper side-by-side, it's very difficult to.
Madam Chair.
That's fine, thank you. Appreciate that. Senator Abler.
So Representative Hicks did a fair amount of work on this. And so I don't know that you want to adopt it right now, but I think as we go forward, I wish there was more real time to work on this. I think it's superior. But I think I would like everybody to have a chance to get comfortable with it. It has been out for a while as the A18 and kind of publicized to people. But I think as we move this into a conference world, I think noticing where Representative Hicks has worked on some of this stuff would be productive for us to notice, and maybe it gets taken in conference or something if you don't want to do it today. I mean, I'm just conscious of time and I have other questions to the bill, but so thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Senator Blair. Did you want to, I don't know, quickly go over the rest of the amendment then? I mean, there's,
Well, I do.
I guess I'm not inclined, I don't really think that this is something that I would recommend adopting because it's got many changes from what we purposely put in the bill. But if you want to go through and explain what the other provisions are in this amendment, can you do that?
Well, absolutely. And Madam Chair, just trying to work, we've actually had quite a bit of work done on a lot of this language by many parties and many eyes. And so I don't want to lose all that just because, of another work group that decided not to do it, that's all. But because at the end we want a stronger product. I will tell you that the part that Mr. Monahan just mentioned is stronger and tighter in the policy work as we try to move toward a tougher bill, and so we can deal with that later. And I just didn't really know how to grapple with this whole additional amendment thing. And I hope it can be considered because the work in here is really very good. It's been engaged with by a bunch of the outside groups. We've had Department TA, which we tried to incorporate faithfully in the various elements. Maybe Mr. Monahan can just kind of walk through and I can't imagine, I don't know practically how this can be brought. This is my last shot at this. to the floor, and then you'll stand up and go like, well, I'm not sure, or something, and I don't want to lose the good work that we've done. And that's my whole intent on this, so. And so Mr. Monahan can kind of start on maybe page 812 and describe how that varies. And some of these, if it's just syntax, I don't care. But if it's content, I do care about that. Thanks, Madam Chair.
I don't know, Mr. Monahan, would you be comfortable doing that, or just starting with section, or 8.12? I would just like to high level what the provisions are, but I don't know if that's something you can do easily.
Madam Chair.
Senator Mayquaid?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we have Mr. Monahan go through that, I want to say first that I really like what I'm reading, and but one of the things that is important, I think, for this committee or these committees and this work is to make sure that the good work goes through like a full process. And so one of the things I'm really struggling with here is like, I like it. I think this looks good to me. But I'm not a person who runs an agency. I'm not a person who is a provider. I'm not a person who receives services. And there's probably things in here that we would want feedback on. And it seems really, really substantive and meaty to try to just like us decide based on a high level overview at 5 o'clock on a Monday. And so while I respect Senator Abler and Representative Hicks and all of their hard work on this, again, I like what I'm reading, but I just feel really uncomfortable because I don't know what I'm actually voting for. And so I'm finding myself a little unmoored, and I don't think a high level or in-depth overview from Mr. Monahan is actually going to change that feeling.
Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to Senator Mayquaid's point, one of the things that when we had, that falls on, Senator Mayquaid, that falls on me when we had originally, the Hicks, at the very beginning of this session, the Hicks and Abler were doing their work, right? And this was really the Hicks-Abler work that was going forward. This is what we did when we took the 40, I can't remember the number, and then we moved everything into that, and I said, all right, Kim and Jim, go get everybody's work, combine it together, and get us from our human services perspective, right? That's what we did with that. And so majority of this stuff that's in there, we've done. The thing that really gets me is what popped for me after I had got a good night's sleep and I ate my Cheerios in the morning, and is the due process proposal. We got to add that back. I mean, we got to, we talk about due process rights, and so that falls on me. This stuff has always been around us, and so maybe what we should do is, what do you need for us to be able to, because let me back up. I think it would make sense for us to move this into that project of let's work on this, right, because of timing, which is what we've been doing all along. And then at the next stop, which is, I don't know where that next stop is, this stuff will be cleaned up again, right? The bill will get cleaned up again, and then it'll get cleaned up at the next stop. So, especially now that we've given Christy and Elise overtime work to do. But a lot, again, I go back then, Senator Mayquaid, that was me. I should have done a better job of saying to everybody, this is what we're doing and this is where we're going with it. So does that make sense to you?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Mayquaid.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. It does make sense, and I don't think it's anybody's fault. Again, like I'm looking at this from Senator Abler, and I like a lot of what I'm seeing. I think I just feel unprepared to vote on it in this moment without having more digestion.
Senator Mohammed, I think you indicated earlier, I'm sorry, I didn't, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions. Senator Abler, were any of these languages heard in committee?
Senator Abler.
Madam Chair, Senator Mohammed, Madam Chair, Senator Mohammed, this was all part of a Friday afternoon event that we had. I think it was an A10 amendment, which was something of that. If you remember that time when we spent a good deal of time working on some of this, and eventually we just kicked out the underlying bill, which actually had some of this stuff in it as well. And so this language is actually the sum of at least 6 different bills, including some of yours, with the compliance training. And so I went through all the bills that people had put in that were out at the time, tried to consolidate them into a thing, thinking this would be a thing that we would all be working on together and then drop on more things as we all build it. So this is that. And then there was the 18 amendment, which consolidated all that, which was sent out to all kinds of people. So I don't know if you got one. But it was, anyway, that's the best I've got.
Senator Mohammed.
Madam Chair, thank you. I appreciate that. I do remember that Friday. Who could forget? And I think that's the point. It wasn't a hearing where, you know, you sat there, went through the bill. We had time to digest it. We had stakeholders. It was an amendment that day that came as a surprise, at least to me and some of the members in this committee. And I think because we're getting this today, I want to know what parts of my bill you included. You know, I think the bills that I brought forward beginning of the session were bills I was working on since June. And so if you're gonna take parts of my bill and include your bill, I would have loved to know ahead of time which parts you liked and which parts that weren't good enough for you. I think that would have been nice, but which parts did you include?
Good enough for me.
Senator Abler.
Well, the part that was worked out, which was the compliance training, and then the questions about the EVV and the UMPI numbers were still outstanding, and so I just left those out, knowing that they would be brought back again, because you were going to keep working on them. So that's all. It was not meant an effort to steal anybody's stuff. It's just a way to get things into a package, knowing we'd be running into this kind of schedule. So. And so, you know, Madam Chair, just this bill needs some due process. This is the due process element. And part of the concern, we talked about indicia, that's back in, and so on. So maybe it would make sense as this goes forward to get some kind of annotated comparison. Because right now, a lot of the providers really do not have a due process. They sit in limbo for a long time over a charge they do not even know what it was, over some billing purposeful error or accidental error that says they charged for more than what they did. I sat with Mr. Clark this morning, and he says all these allegations are about billing for services that they think were not provided. There's a lot of reasons a person could bill for what's not provided. One is they're a thief, ranging all the way to they had just a staff who just was not good at their job. And they're treated the same. And then they get into this whole process, and the AG has at least 280 bills, cases referred to them for like 7 lawyers. DHS is up to their neck. It's in the paper. They're awash with all these. And in the meantime, people sit in languishing, and people that had perfectly good records and services are not even getting to know. And that's what the in-camera thing is about. That's the 90-day thing. At least could you tell me you're working on it? These other ideas are just constructive ways to help ferret out the innocent from the guilty. And if you look at the Hicks part, which I ascribe to, it's even tougher on some of the duties they have. So I don't want to lose it for the lack of people's understandings. And so, Madam Chair, I think if you just will be amenable to this, we can create some kind of a comparative so people know. But I've done the best one person can do, not being a chair of anything, to get this as public as possible, engaging with tons of people behind the scenes. And I think there's if we had time for testimony, I think there'd be 10 people that get up and go like, this is a good thing. So, but Madam Chair, I don't want to put you in a position to have to vote on what you don't understand, nor Senator Mohammed. So I think is that enough? John, you think that's sufficient for now, or what do you want to do?
Senator Mohammed.
Thank you, Senator Abler, and I certainly share that the feeling that the providers do need more answers from the agency. If there's going to be a payment withhold, a payment stop, they should have an understanding as to why that is and have the ability to go through the process. I think due process is important. It's something I share with you. It's something I hear a lot from from providers and as well as the members in this committee. Both sides, I think, share that feeling. And it's also important to give the tools that the agency needs to get through this. I think DHS, they talked about having lack of staff. Their staff is leaving left and right. There's struggle there. I will say this is a huge amendment, and it's the first time I'm seeing it. I would have loved it if you talked to us ahead of time. I think that's always important. So I think it'd be good to go through some, like what the amendment actually does.
Well, Madam Chair, if Senator Monahan wants us
Senator
to fly through it, and maybe you just had an idea in terms of your process. If some of these have to go to judiciary and there's some uncertainty about them, we could create perhaps another article, at least they could be sent there, so at least they wouldn't die for the lack of judicial review, and then we could continue to work on this.
Senator Blair, I mean, if that was a way that could be brought forward as an amendment to, another committee, I would be more open to that than to have this included, because it does have a lot of things in here all at once, and we do have some due process provisions in the bill, and so I think trying to adjust and compare right now is challenging. I think there's also, I have a concern that maybe there are things that you have removed from the underlying bill that might be from Senator Mohamed's work. So I'm not comfortable adding this to or carrying this forward with all of those unknowns. Senator Mohamed.
Madam Chair, so my understanding is once the bill leaves the committee today, it has to go to judiciary, even though parts of this bill have already been heard in judiciary. Is that correct?
Senator Mohamed, some of the provisions were heard in judiciary, some policy provisions, but there are others that were not yet, and so that we do need to have heard in the Judiciary Committee.
Okay, that's helpful.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do just want to point out that on page 12, line 21 of the amendment, all the way to page 13, line 17, I believe that is identical to the A7 amendment, which I believe, voted down. It's line
90-day stuff, yeah.
12, or 12.23 to 13.17 is identical to the A7. That was voted down earlier.
And Madam Chair, I did mention
Senator
that,
Blair.
so I'm not trying to have you vote on that twice. But I think that the content of this is, maybe if Mr. Monahan could just briefly go through, so we left page, I don't know if the 812 and so on is part of another amendment that somebody else did. Part of the challenge here, Madam Chair, is the time. And so, people are concerned about a 14-page amendment, and we're working off a 200-page amendment. So we're trying to all be friendly here to make it sort out. So, Madam Chair, could Mr. Monahan just kind of go through, just help people understand the topics that are in here?
Mr. Monahan, would you be able to do that, please?
Madam Chair, members, so on the amendment, I sort of skimmed through all the provider enrollment language. That gets us through to the top of page 9. There is, I will mention something that's not in the underlying bill at all is the enrollment moratorium for high-risk providers on page 8. This language is mirrored on the discretionary licensing moratorium that was enacted last year. This would instead be a MA enrollment moratorium, but the language is more or less the same as far as the provisions go. So on page 9, Lines 11 adds a definition of abuse to, so now we've switched topics, sorry. So the first half of the amendment is about provider enrollment. The second half of the amendment is about Senator Abler's sanctions language. So on page 9, line 11, adds a definition of abuse to the sanctions language in order to clarify what is and is not abuse. The language beginning at line 14, all that is intended by Senator Abler is to remove language from the statute and replace it with a corresponding definition in the federal regulations related to overpayments. On page 10 is a similar idea, removing language from state statute and instead replacing it with a reference to the federal code. The language beginning on page 10, line 12, is similar to language that is already in the bill related to changes. Most of it's recodified language, but there are some language differences, which if you give me a moment, I should be able to identify. Right, the one change is right at the very beginning of paragraph A. Senator Abler adds, except when law enforcement requests the commissioner not to suspend payments to the other conditions under which the commissioner needs to withhold payments. So in this case, commissioner has to withhold payments unless law enforcement says don't do it, maybe because they don't want to tip someone off. The rest is mostly just wording differences, nothing that substantial in that section. Moving to page 11, this is the language that was in the A. No, this is in both bills. The big difference is that Senator Abler's language makes an explicit reference to a contested case, and the underlying proposal in front of you does not. The underlying bill has timelines that Senator Abler's provision doesn't. Again, the underlying bill has language about what the administrative law judge needs to do after reviewing the supporting case for a credible allegation of fraud. The underlying bill has language specifying that the individual or entity may submit their own evidence to be considered by the administrative law judge. Senator Abler's does not. Those are the main differences in that section. Then the language on page 12 is, as Senator McQuaid pointed out, identical to what was in the A7. And then the last two sections are directions to the commissioner. The first has to do with, setting, proposing additional enrollment standards. Related to financial stability, being prepared to provide the service, financial liquidity, solvency, requires the commissioner to work with various community organizations. And then the last section is a direction of the commissioner to develop a proportional program integrity intervention. Basically, the idea is to categorize various violations by their degree of severity and then impose proportional corrective actions or penalties or increased training or technical assistance to respond to those violations.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Abler?
So based on that overview, I think there are a couple sections that this committee would probably want to adopt. That would be lines 9.10 through line 10.10. And so line 9, that just says that a billing error is not fraud. That's the first one, which I think is really sound. And the next two just reference the federal regulations compared to state. I think that's a strengthening. So that would be a good start on this, Madam Chair, and I would move those lines as my only motion based on this bill, this amendment.
Okay, members, any comments or discussion about that? So you're saying we would move forward with that from 9.10 to 10.10? Is that what you're proposing?
Correct, yeah.
And all the rest is
I'll
not?
just leave the rest for now. I'll work on it.
Okay.
See what I can.
Any comments or discussion about that? Senator Abler, stated one more time.
So to adopt lines 9.10 through 10.10. That's the billing error is not a fraud, and then two federal references.
Okay. Questions about that language?
10.8 is my favorite. Madam Chair.
Senator Hoffman.
Thank you. Those are the direct questions that we had asked, the assurances, when one of the concerns that I had about how the Attorney General's bill was, assurance that billing errors would not be deemed, abuse. And so this language clarifies that up for us. So I feel really good about what Senator Abler is doing on that piece of it. So I'm a yes.
Any other questions about that? And I don't want to put you on the spot. Ms. Graham, if you don't have a comment, that's fine. But if you do, I'm just going to open it or ask you if you wanted to comment.
Madam Chair, we would need more time to understand the implications. On its face, it looks like there could be unintended consequences, but I'd have to take it back to our staff.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Ms. Hitchcock, Willis, if you could take the roll.
Chair Hoffman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Fata? Lead Rasmussen?
He froze.
Lead Rasmussen?
Maybe you could act it out.
Okay. Senator Abler?
Yes.
Senator Gruenhagen?
Yes.
Senator May Quaid?
Pass.
Senator Mohammed?
Pass.
Senator Udke?
Yes.
Senator Wiklund?
Yes.
Senator Lee Rasmussen,
Rasmussen, no.
Senator Mohammed, Senator McQuaid.
Chair Wiklund,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mann, Lee Dutke,
Yes.
Senator Abler,
Yes.
Senator Bolden,
Aye.
Senator Fateh, Senator Karan,
Yes.
Senator Kupek,
Yes.
Senator Liskey, Senator Port,
No.
Senator Hoffman, the HHS is 7 votes yes and 1 no.
Human Services, we got 8 yeses and 1 nay, Madam Chair, so.
Okay, then can we move on to the next amendment? Senator Atke.
Thank you. I guess I would like to, are you still going to consider some of this down the road possibly? So I would have one question, and this probably, I'll start out with Mr. Monahan. When we look under provider enrollment, and it's listed as provider types of limited risk, moderate risk, and high risk, is that coming from the federal code that's referenced below that? And I'm on page 1, starting with page 1, line 13.
Mr. Monahan?
Madam Chair, Senator Utke, so 2 things. First, the language you're looking at in that the entire first subdivision is simply a recodification of the existing provider enrollment statute with some cleanup. But the distinction between limited risk, moderate risk, and high risk is something that, let's see if I can get this right. There's a federal regulation that for Medicare purposes specifies provider types as being in some of these categories. And when they published that list, they published in the Federal Register a series of criteria they used to designate those Medicare types as one of these categories. They then told the states, for Medicaid purposes, those same provider types fall in these categories. And then there are Medicaid-only provider types. And they said to the states, you, state Medicaid agency, need to categorize all of your MA provider types into one of these 3 categories. And when you do it, you should use the same criteria that we used when we did it for Medicare purposes. The criteria then are interpreted by the state Medicaid agency, in this case DHS, and they apply those criteria to Minnesota-specific Medicaid provider types and categorize them. And that list you can find on their website.
Senator Atke.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Monahan. And then I'm going to go on to page 4, where we talk about the surety bonds. And this is just for further conversation when and if it comes up down the road. Not needed today, but where it talks about the amount of $100,000 or 5% of the provider's payments, and then based on, what they received during the year. And we have some providers that receive a lot of money, but I guess there's where I'll go back and look at what is considered high risk. And then the second part of that question would be is, why are we doing business with high risk? You walk into a bank and you got horrible credit, you don't get a loan. I'm kind of wondering if we need to draw the line on some of that maybe. I guess that's where over time I want to find out more about who's in that high risk bucket, because if they're truly high risk, it sounds like maybe that's not the group we should be dealing with. And, and if we cut back on some of that, that's going to push those below further in line, because if you know you could get cut off, you're going to straighten out your game. And so that's conversations for the days ahead, but I do have some concerns related to that.
You had head nod in there. Sorry, Madam Chair. You had head.
Mr. Chair.
He had head nods, Madam Chair, so.
Well,
Ms. Grom.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, Senator Aki, I mean, I think that we would lose access to a lot of important services if we no longer allowed any high-risk providers. For example, nursing facilities are considered high risk when they first enroll. Durable medical equipment is considered high risk. There's many services that I think it's not as if those provider types or the services are inherently, there's a reason to not reimburse them. It's just that they need enhanced oversight depending on the service model or specific circumstances that are occurring within that service type. So for example, personal care assistance or CFSS, Community First Services and Supports is in that bucket. And as a result of being there, they've made a lot of changes over the years, and they're sort of the standard that the legislature even looks to for an unlicensed service. How to structure that service in a way that complies with program integrity. So I think that is a bigger discussion, but happy to connect with you more, Senator Otke.
Mr. Monahan, did you have something you wanted to add?
Madam Chair, Senator Utke, I think Ms. Grom's comments may have implied what I'm about to say, but just to make it explicit, the term high risk does not apply to a particular provider. It applies to a provider type. So when we designate a provider type as high risk, we're saying anybody who provides this service is high risk, whether they've been in business for 50 years and never had a compliance problem, or they're brand new licensee.
Yep, thank you, because I was taking it in as a provider that was sketchy, and so appreciate that.
Okay. Senator Fateh.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair. I've been in the queue for a while, so I almost forgot my own question. And so I just wanted to circle back around some of the due process stuff, and I was told, I think 44.3, around the appeals portion of the temporary payment withhold. Maybe that can be where some of the due process timelines can be fit into rather than the entire amendment that was discussed earlier. Around the 90-day timeline versus 60-day, I know there was conversations around that, but I wanted to see if there's an appetite to have that discussion. Yeah.
Senator Fateh, I guess I would say that I would like to know what it is you want specifically to discuss, or if there's specific language change that you're asking for. If it's general, I mean, I think if you see something in the A13 that you wish to see discussed further, I think it's possible for you to take that language and work on it. I'm not sure if you're asking to review that in the context of what's on page 44. That is the appeal process that's been worked on and included. Did you have specific questions about it? Or
Yeah, I know that
Senator Fateh.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. I know 1223 to like 13.9-ish, or maybe beyond that, was already offered as a previous amendment. I know that it was still a work in progress that both sides were not really fully happy with, but for example, I know the providers were requesting 60 days rather than 90 days, but for the payments timelines and due process, I think that section could fit within 44.3. I would also like guidance from Ms. Grom if that's something that she's open to having that discussion, if we can put it there as a placeholder to continue on the conversation.
Ms. Grom.
Madam Chair, Senator Fateh, just so I'm clear, we're on the A13 and you're referring to section 33, is that right? And you're wondering if we have concerns or feedback on that section?
Yeah, and subdivision 2E, page 12, lines 12.23. 12.23. I know 12.23 until probably 13.16. If that can fit into the appeal process in 44.3 in that section, and then we can, I guess, wordsmith it in a better way afterwards.
Any immediate comments, Ms. Brown?
Madam Chair, I would really need some time with this to see what aligns and what doesn't, but Senator Fata, we talked today a bit about this.
Yes.
We are happy to work with you. I know we provided some technical assistance, and I just don't want to say anything on the record that would be incorrect, and that would lead to a bad policy outcome here. So maybe we could work on that.
Senator Fate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Ms. Grom. And yeah, I did swing it by Ms. Grom earlier today. I'm 100% committed to working with you and having acceptable language by DHS. If we stick it in today, then later on, if she's not really happy with it, I'm happy to remove it.
Senator Fate, I don't know if you're suggesting a specific amendment or specific language that you want to pull out of this to bring forward.
I guess it would be stripping out basically the A13 down to that section to stick it in.
Because we already did strip it down to a different section, and that was what Senator Abler wanted to move forward with. And so we've already done that.
Okay, so I'm trying to think. So is there a way we can maybe do an oral amendment to have that language placed in subdivision 2D?
I am not sure that I don't know what lines you're asking to take from this.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Section on page 12 of the A13, lines 12.23 up until lines 13.16.
Senator Fate, I think this is what we already had discussed earlier with the expiration or the different periods of time.
Correct. And so when we went into recess for the floor, that's when I spoke with Ms. Grom about it. We haven't spoken to her previous to that. So I was just asking if the agency would be okay sticking it as a placeholder and we can work on the language together. And if it doesn't work out, then I'm happy to.
Senator Fate, we already voted on this language, is my understanding. This was the A7.
Correct. So the conversations I had, oh, sorry, Madam Chair. Go ahead.
Senator Fate, you had conversations, but I don't know if Ms. Graham is going to say something that changes our mind. We already voted on this language. We had concerns about it, and it was not brought forward.
Okay, if that's the case, I can change the time period to 120 days so it's not identical, just as a placeholder. And then we can work on the language afterwards.
Senator Fate, it wasn't the exact number of days, it was the concept of it. So if you're asking us to vote again on just changing one thing about this, is that what you're asking?
Yes, Madam Chair. And if that's okay, but before I request that, I wanted to check with Ms. Grom first. I know you don't want to say anything incorrect, but are you okay and trusting for us to have this as a placeholder, and later on, if it's not included, then we can remove it, if we're not into an agreement with the language?
Ms. Grom.
Madam Chair, Senator Fata, I apologize because I thought previous to now we were talking about lines 12.13 to 12.20 in the A13, but now it sounds like we're talking about a different part of the bill. I would say we do have concerns with putting a time limit here in law here, so I don't think that a lot of this is contingent on law enforcement investigations, and so I think that's a conundrum in the issue that we have.
Okay.
Senator Fate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If that's the case, then I'll work with the agency offline.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on from the A13, or were there any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to the A14, which is my amendment. This was language that was brought to me by the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. It's a technical amendment that just helps clean up some language that has to do with the human, no, I don't have the particular proposal, but it's just some technical assistance from the department, and it will also incorporate Department of Human Services technical assistance. So that is the A14.
Line item.
Oh, it is the Human Services redesign. It's a study language. Are there any questions? If not, Ms. Hitchcock-Willis. I
Chair
apologize.
Hoffman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fata,
Aye.
Lead Rasmussen,
Rasmussen, no.
Senator Abler, Senator Gruenhagen, Senator May Quaid, Senator Mohammed, Senator Udke, Senator Wiklund,
Yes.
Senator May Quaid,
Chair Wiklund,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mann, Lead Utke, Senator Abler,
Yes.
Senator Bolden,
Yes.
Senator Fate, Senator Karan, Senator Kupek,
Yes.
Senator Liskey, Senator Port,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Chair.
7 yeas and 2 noes.
HHS, 7 yeas and 0 noes. And that one we will move forward with. Next, there's one more the only other amendment that I'm aware of, the A15 amendment, and I don't know, is that Senator Gruenhagen?
Oh, boy. What the A15 does, it says that it's a termination for fraud. You know, we've had so much chaos in DHS, and as far as I know, nobody's been terminated. And, you know, basically it says if during a calendar year, I prefer 0%, but I compromised at 2% of the annual budget is identified as fraud by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, the commissioner will automatically be terminated. And we're not talking about musical chairs, we're talking about leaving the department, period, okay? You know, I will tell one story here. When I was on the school board, I made a motion to terminate a particular position during a board meeting on TV, okay? And we took a vote and it passed. So, you know, one thing about termination, I'll say the work ethic at the school district went up dramatically the next day. Right? I mean, you can pass, so, you know, the history is we got DHS ignoring the laws that were all on the books, persecuting and whistleblowers. And, you know, if you have something like this, termination creates a lot of activity, right? And, you know, the thing about government, they overkill. I mean, it's one amendment after the next. I'm looking at a testifier there. She looks a little overwhelmed. It's kind of like, boom, we just keep piling on. You basically give her a budget, say if you have fraud, guess what? You're terminated, period. It's a little tough love, But when you look at the chaos that's developed over the last several years and the people who are hurt in the, that are supposed to be receiving services, the persecution and against current employees, I mean, somebody should be fired and immediately. And yet, as far as I know, nobody's been fired. Now, we had the commissioner step down, but she got another job right away. Again, my experience is termination creates a lot of activity, positive activity. And you don't have to pass a lot of stuff. You just simply say, here's your budget. If there's fraud, you're gone. We're getting somebody else. Okay? You're working with the taxpayer money. People who need services are being hurt. The federal government is threatening to withhold federal funds. That's enough of that, okay? I'm sorry.
Okay, any other discussion, questions about the A15? I would say that the Senate's role, there is a role for the legislature in this process, and so I would be opposed to this amendment. And are there any other questions or comments? Ms.
Chair Hoffman.
No.
Vice Chair Fata. Lead Rasmussen.
Rasmussen, yes.
Senator Abler.
Pass.
Senator Gruenhagen.
Yes.
Senator McQuaid.
No.
Senator Mohammed.
No.
Senator Udke.
Yes.
Senator Wiklund.
No.
Senator Abler.
Chair Wiklund,
No.
Vice Chair Mann, Lead Utke,
Yes.
Senator Abler,
Repass.
Senator Bolden,
No.
Senator Fate,
No.
Senator Karan, Senator Kupek,
No.
Senator Liskey, Senator Port.
No.
Madam Chair?
Senator Hoffman.
I got 3 yeas and 5 nays.
You're fired. No.
The HHS, we have one yes and 5 no votes, so it does not move forward. Members, are there, Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have an amendment, so if any other members have amendments, they can go ahead. I just wanted to offer some comments on the bill in the debate today.
Are there any other amendments?
Madam Chair.
Senator Abler.
There's some things I'd like to ask about and maybe delete, but I would rather let Senator Rasmussen have his chance. We've kind of tied up a lot of discussion. I have some questions about the bill, and so that'll let him go first, and then you can come back to me.
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't know if you're chief authoring this bill or if Senator Hoffman will, but I guess I'll ask both of you. Is there anything in this bill before the committee that would hold the Department of Human Services accountable for their failure to protect taxpayer dollars and stop fraud in Minnesota?
Senator Rasmussen, I would say this bill is designed to put in place additional methods of addressing billing and service delivery oversight. This is a bill that will put into place provisions that address human services administrative reform. It addresses licensing and background studies. It addresses medical assistance provider enrollment and medical assistance sanctions. It also brings forward universal service standards, which are a way to increase program integrity by moving services to licensure. So I think there are a lot of different ways that we are addressing program integrity, addressing, strengthening tools that the department has to address fraud, as well as other situations. So that's what I'd say about that. Senator Hoffman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You did that. There's authority to impose sanctions on there. Don't also remember there's definition statutory modifications that we put in here. There's a due process proposal, the in-camera review, those conversations all had in there. Go to response, the OLA report on the auditor's reports. There's some response to that. So I think it gets to what we started having the conversation at the beginning of the year, Senator Rasmussen. If you feel that if you're looking at this in some things, this is why we even having this conversation and going to the next 2 or 3 stops is if we missed something out here, bring it to us. Just like Senator Gruenhagen in his school board piece, he brought that. Although I like that, it just doesn't fit constitutionally, so that's fine. But I think we're on the right path, Senator Rasmussen.
Senator Rasmussen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the big concern that I have is we had a legislative audit report that when we brought the legislative auditor to our committee, I asked Judy Randall, are we missing more laws, or do we have enough laws? We just don't have the Department of Human Services doing their job. And Auditor Randall's response was that we have enough laws on the books, but DHS just isn't following them, whether it's required site visits, implementing electronic visit verification, investigating and prosecuting kickbacks within certain service areas. And I'm just concerned today that this bill doesn't really address accountability at the Department of Human Services. There are good provisions in here that I support. And then we also hear the news as we were reconvening this committee that the Walz administration has effectively switched the commissioner into a deputy commissioner spot and taken the deputy commissioner appointed as temporary commissioner. And then within a few minutes, we see that the health committee cancels the confirmation hearing for tomorrow on the Department of Human Services commissioner. And to me, that's the core problem here, is that we have a department that has not taken seriously enough the role of protecting taxpayers and to ensuring program integrity. And we can again provide more tools, but with the tools that the department has today, they haven't used them. And so by giving them more responsibility, more tools, I still have a lack of confidence within the Department of Human Services to actually act and enforce these rules and laws, and especially with this switch that we saw took place this afternoon in an apparent attempt to avoid the accountability of a confirmation hearing tomorrow. I just, again, continue to have concerns and would like to see our 2 committees bring in the Department of Human Services leadership and ask them what's going on and what their plan is to protect taxpayers.
Thank you. Other members? Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Senator Rasmussen took the words out of my mouth. I mean, we basically have a department that we have plenty of laws, and they're not being listened to. And yet, nobody's losing their job. I mean, and then we got billions of dollars of alleged fraud, and then we got people, the feds wanting to withhold hundreds of millions of dollars, and people who need the services not getting them. I'm sorry. Somebody needs to be fired. And the other thing about the bill, I talked to the long-term care people, and in Article 5, Sections 40 and 41, they just said, we're piling on more and more requirements, and then we're putting a quality measure in there. Only 2 out of 351 nursing homes, according to them, can meet the quality where they get a little higher reimbursement. Their estimate is you're going to lose about 40 nursing homes. I've already lost 2 nursing homes in my area. So I don't know why we want to punish nursing homes in this bill and where our most vulnerable are. So I got a lot of problems with this bill. And again, we have a department that thumbs its nose at the laws we passed. We got plenty of laws, just like Senator Rasmussen reported, and they're not being listened to. So, I mean, it's an exercise in futility. People need to be fired, period. That'll get their attention. Thank you.
Senator Abler.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And so I just have, like, just to echo just a little version of the last little section. And then I have just a number of questions, and I still have some concerns about some of the provisions in the bill, and I'll try not to delay, but it's quite a large amendment, and I'm not trying to be dilatory. In the conference time, you were in the health one, Senator, and Senator Hoffman and I and others were in a room trying to fix housing stabilization, and we fixed it. And and suddenly in the last months, the administration was very concerned about this fraud thing, and I mean, we're all concerned. I'm not trying to see who's more concerned. We're all concerned, but there was a very relaxed attitude toward this, and we fixed it. And then then the governor decided to cancel the program and set up these various programs, and a result of that that hasty action, I'm just going to repeat it again, and not bringing in counsel from the communities and us, 5 people are dead. And when I say that, nobody even blanches anymore, Madam Chair. This is just not okay. And so they just when the council comes, the disability ombudsman comes and says, yeah, there's quite a few people homeless, quite a few people not getting services. We heard from Lydia, who sat for 2.5 months with her mom quitting work because of this oversight. And we all want oversight, but I don't know where the accountability goes. And it's up, frankly, and I don't spend much time ripping on the governor. He makes his, he does plenty of himself to make it look like he's not too engaged here, and I wish he were. And I tried to work with the guy, and he didn't want to, fine. But at the end of the day, people are dead. And that's how serious this business is. And we have to make sure that there has to be some accountability. And I know they're lean at the department, but it's on my mind. Senator Hoffman, I know all of us feel bad about that. And if we had the pictures of them up front, we'd have a little meeting and we'd go, oh crap, these people are dead. And we have a moment of silence and people would notice it. And that's the heart of this work. That's what we're doing, is to keep good providers on the job and get the bad ones to be taken off the job. How do we do that the most carefully? And that's the burden I feel as I work on all this stuff, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair. So anyway, so I have some thoughts. There's some things in the bill that just don't belong there, but I have, if somebody wants to take notes on the practicality of some of the things, on 27.1, people have to get a pre-enrollment risk assessment by this July. I just don't know how that's going to happen. They can't get the ones done that they have. And so could somebody just make a note, Senator Wiklund, if this is your thing, that is not a good deadline. I have a question, and I'll try to be as quick as I can. This is a work in progress, and I'm glad to be at least a part of it. On line 28.12, we have to get some surety bonds, and they have to be bought annually, new annually. Senator Utke is like, yes, new accounts, but that's the same old one, and I don't know why you want to get a new one, and why to add the burden, and there may be some reason, but I can't think of what it is. So if somebody can make a note of that, and why on earth do we put a company that's already has no time? These people work like the DHS staff does, they start at 60 hours on their short weeks. And then on line 30.1, this is in the deficiency revalidation procedures. I don't know who helped with this. So Senator Rasmussen and I worked to rescue a provider that was convinced that they were not going to be renewed, and they're a legacy provider. 20 years and they're great. And on line 30.1, if the provider fails to respond or remedy a deficiency within the 30-day period, then they're going to give 30 days notice and suspend them. That just seems like ridiculous, especially in a department that has a hard time, getting a number put together when it's as simple as that on people who are already ratified. So that is not enough notice. I don't have an amendment prepared for it, but if they're just being jerks about it, then fine. But the back and forth, and it's just the lines 30.1 to 30.3 are simply just a bad number. Madam Chair, on line 32.14, these individual numbers for everybody, we've heard testimony about that. The home care people and others cautioned us about this. If you're a residential provider, you don't need a number. They come punch in and then they bill it as a bulk thing. If there's some remote providers, maybe. But Senator Wiklund, this area needs to be worked on. This is going to cause trouble, and I don't think it's your intent. So just telling you that. And then one that the department offered TA on to come, that's the prepayment on 34.1, prepayment review for everybody. This says the commissioner must conduct prepayment reviews of the whole world. In the governor's budget, that saved $167 million. How did it save money? By shifting off payments 2 weeks. But in the real life, what does that amount to? Senator Hoffman, the answer is $340 million. It's based on a 51% state share. It would affect $340 million out of nursing homes, out of all the Medicaid providers, to accomplish prepayment review of legacy people. And so I totally support prepayment review if you have people who are doing bad work or they're high risk or new or something. But to impose $1/3 billion cut on these agencies is just really a bad idea. And actually I had more of them. I'm just trying to give you the few things here. And I talked with Mr. Clark today about what if the Mofuku says there's no evidence of criminal behavior. We're working on some of that for some TA later on. So that'll be, I think, helpful. On line 63.11, this is actually very significant. 63.10 to 63.13. This talks about new controlling individuals. And so they suggest that if there's a pending administrative investigation, that would be indicia. And so I don't think it's a very low bar. And I don't think you want to have the administrative, just like what we're doing now. If there's a indicia of suspicion or whatever the term is, that these people are going to be suspended. And so I think if there's a criminal investigation or civil action or something, I think this whole paragraph needs some work. Because I think it's going to capture too many people who are in a process who are not necessarily genuine criminals. If there's a charge, maybe it's dismissed. And so I think you want to do something to watch over that. And I think some of the providers out there could have some advice about how to word this. But I don't think you want to have this heavy of a hammer, especially using the word simply administrative. Okay, Madam Chair, do you get that? So that's friendly to what you're trying to do.
We're typing, we're writing.
Whoa.
You should see Sam do his little.
I didn't see any pens moving, Mr. Chair. That's why I was like, the dinosaur part of me. Anyway, so I'm, at line, on 181.14, that talks about the ICS rates. This whole ICS section, I don't have an amendment to take it all out. But Madam Chair, I suggest that the ICS providers have been working to give you some content about how to go after the criminal robber ICS people, and we are all against robbers. And so, and this reevaluation has really not been worked through to be satisfactory. We don't want to go back to a FRS situation where suddenly these services are not available and people wind up being homeless and dying. So that's my suggestion on that. There is something I'm going to make a motion on page 191.13. I need some help, but this cap on the insurance rates for nursing homes, 191.13 to 191.24, yeah, that whole, 125, I think. And so this is $20 million out of the nursing home industry. It's $10 million state share, and it's not going to hold up through the other body anyway, so I suggest you just get rid of it now and spare yourself the pain. And so, Madam Chair, I'll move to delete 191.13 to 191.25. That's the correct motion, Mr. Monahan.
Senator Abler, I thought we were done with amendments. I asked, are we done with amendments?
No, when I said I may have some deletions, and
that deletion doesn't the same word as amendment. I mean, if you want us to.
Well, I have a couple.
I just
there's a
really
couple
thought
things.
we were
This is
wrapping up with closing comments on.
Well, no, those are the written amendments.
But I asked if anybody had any other amendments.
I'm sorry I didn't answer the question correctly, Madam Chair. There's a couple of these, and then I'm done. But this is a terrible piece. This is nobody on my side of the aisle is going to vote for this thing, and you might need some of those votes. So I'm just saying, we're cutting nursing homes in a draft amendment that popped up on Friday is a terrible idea. And so, as is, I don't understand about the rate limits on 191.27. I'll just say what I'm planning to do. And then I'm concerned about the state takeover of Medicaid assessments, and then I'm done.
I'm sorry, Senator Abler.
I only have 3 things I want to talk about to delete, and then I'm done.
Okay.
And I apologize if I misunderstood what you were getting at.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Raymond, this language, if we deleted it now with that, the target, the assumed target that's sitting here with that. We don't have a target. My God. Sine die, anyone?
Well,
no
Mr.
target.
Chair,
Thank you for clarifying that.
Mr. Chair, the bill creates savings, but I'm afraid that some of those savings are based upon putting everybody under a 2-week delay.
Correct.
So, I mean, fiscally, this bill has some challenges. We're just talking about the policy. We haven't talked about the math, really, how it works, and it's just things we never want to do. We shouldn't take credit for doing those.
And I'm good. This piece, I was looking at it as there's a fiscal savings on this side. I don't care if you want to, I'm okay doing what you want to do with this now. I mean, I looked at that and over in the House 50-50, you think this makes it? No. Yeah, I get that. We knew that.
Well, actually,
I knew that looking at it, but
So, Mr. Chair, maybe I can just
I'm giving
make
up my strategies. Now you guys
Yeah.
know how I strategeries, so.
Senator Mayquaid.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would oppose deleting this language, and I'm feeling a little punchy, so I'm gonna try to rein it in. But a lot of people are suffering because Republicans refuse to extend the ACA. That is where we are at. Healthcare costs are high, period. Y'all did that. So now we have to pay health insurance costs to nursing homes, some of whom are directly related to the health insurance companies that we're reimbursing the cost for. which we should deal with. That is the self-dealing I asked the long-term care imperative about, that they said they couldn't commit to not doing. I am feeling punchy. So I would encourage us to leave this in. We're not in a place to make this bill cost more money. And some of what you're upset about, y'all caused. So let's just deal with it and keep moving on.
Senator Utke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And speaking to this language, first of all, I couldn't disagree more with the comments just made about insurance companies. We need to understand how that really operates. But the fact is, our nursing homes are struggling so much already, and now we're struggling to get employees, and now we're going to tell them that we're limiting what they can contribute to the health insurance. It's even going to make it harder for them to get good staff and all of that. So I fully support getting rid of this section of language, because this is not good. It's going to hurt our nursing home industry across the state.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair.
Senator Abler.
This actually will affect a lot of the SEIU workers, because they actually have a better package because of their unionization. And so just to say, this is not meant to help any corporate fat cats. This is the line workers that get reimbursed. This is not, anyway, that's that, so.
Senator Abler, I would also oppose removing the language, because I think it is meant to encourage and address that there needs to be conscientious approaches to managing health insurance costs, and this is saying that maybe that's something that you should look at in nursing homes. So if they could do that and save costs, I think we should suggest that they do that. So I'm opposed to taking it out as well. Are there any other discussion?
Can vote.
Okay, Ms. Hitchcock-Willis.
Chair Hoffman?
No.
Vice Chair Fata? Lead Rasmussen?
Rasmussen, aye.
Senator Abler?
Yes.
Senator Gruenhagen? Senator Mequade?
No.
Senator Mohammed?
No.
Senator Utke?
Aye.
Senator Wiklund?
No.
Chair Wiklund,
No.
Vice Chair Mann, Lead Utke,
Yes.
Senator Abler,
Yes.
Senator Bolden,
No.
Senator Fateh, Senator Karan, Senator Kupek,
Pass.
Senator Liskey, Senator Port,
No.
Madam Chair.
Senator Hoffman.
We have 3 yeas and 4 noes.
And Health and Human Services is 2 yeses and 3 nos.
Madam Chair.
Senator Abler.
So I'm just surprised. I thought this would be an easy one. So we already did the Human Services bill. This should have been in that. If you were going to do it, it should have been there. This is like the fraud bill. There's nothing to do with fraud and the rates. I'm just telling you, it's inappropriate that it's here and you put it there, and it's fine. And it didn't come out, and that's fine. I took my vote. So the next one is this total care related payment limits. I think that's problematic as well. We really haven't even heard about it. And I would like to move to delete section 41.
Senator Abler, can you state which page and?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's just past that, 191.26. And that's section 41. And in an ordinary time, we'd actually have testimony about this, and they would tell us why this is problematic. And so it's a way to cut more nursing home. I'm sure this is a savings, but it's inappropriate. And just to bear in mind, as people look at the savings listed on the spreadsheet, multiply it times a little over 2. So this, the insurance one saved about 9 or 10 million, so it cuts about 20. I don't know what the savings is here, but it puts this as an ongoing thing without any work. So That's my request, if we could delete that, please.
Any comments on
Senator Rasmussen
Senator Abler's motion? Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be supporting Senator Abler's amendment here because this language isn't about stopping fraud. This isn't about program integrity. This is just another nursing home cut. And I think if we're going to be debating broader budget items, that should have been in the Human Services budget bill, but instead we're seeing it put in this, so-called program integrity package. And again, I think what Minnesotans are asking us to do is to stop the fraud and hold those responsible for the fraud to account. And I don't see this language doing that.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would be a strong opponent of striking this language. I want to remind half of this committee, of this joint committee, of a moment we had, and I'll illuminate for the Health and Human Services members who are here. It is fraud when nursing homes cannot commit to me that they won't engage in self-dealing. It is harmful to seniors and it is fraud. And so this bill is about reining in fraud. That includes taxpayer dollars that are being taken, given to companies that own the shell company, that own the LLC, that own the property, no more. So I think this is the absolutely appropriate place for this language, and I appreciate that it's in here, and I would oppose striking it.
Madam Chair.
Senator Hoffman.
Thank you. We did hear this. We did hear this when the governors, when the folks, we did hear this in our committee, and there was no discussion. I didn't see anybody coming up saying that they were, again, this is where all said and now we're at this. I like it when Senator Utke and I do this. Which way you're measuring on that one? But I'm gonna align with Senator McQuaid on this conversation because I believe we had no pushback when this was being brought forward in our committee, Senator Abler. So.
And any other comments?
Just go.
Seeing none, Ms. Hitchcock,
Let's go ditto.
you can take the roll.
I'll predict the outcome, Madam Chair.
Chair Hoffman?
No.
Vice Chair Fata? Lead Rasmussen?
Rasmussen, aye.
Senator Abler?
Yes.
Senator Gruenhagen? Senator McQuaid?
No.
Senator Mohammed? Senator Udke?
Yes.
Senator Wiklund?
No.
Chair Wiklund,
No.
Vice Chair Mann, Lead Utke,
Yes.
Senator Abler,
Yes.
Senator Bolden,
No.
Senator Fate, Senator Curran, Senator Kupek,
Pass.
Senator Liskey, Senator Port.
No.
Madam Chair, 3 ayes, 4 nays.
And Health and Human Services, 2 yes and 3 no.
Madam Chair.
Senator Abler.
I have my last thing. So, and it's we flew through the explanation of this. Before I move to delete it, can somebody please tell me what page 197 is this transfer assessment where we're going to transfer things over? Is this the min choices and the counties being taken out of the loop on that? Can somebody just explain that to me? What assessments they're taking over? This isn't the, anyway, they can just tell me that.
I don't know if there's someone who can comment more on the description. This was meant to assess, I don't know.
Oh, it's a plan for a takeover by the state of some of the county functions. And
It doesn't
so-
have anything about min choices in it, so I don't
Well, it says
think it's-
assessment, so, is that the right one? 197.13, yeah, well, if nobody can tell me what it is, then we
Mr.
shouldn't
Monahan,
have it there.
Mr. Monahan,
He knows everything.
Madam Chair, Senator Abler, the word assessment as it's used in this section has nothing to do with assessments in the context of min choices. This is an assessment of whether or not it would be a good idea for the state to take over eligibility determinations from the counties and bring it into the department. And it asks the commissioner to think about that, develop a plan, and to do so in consultation with relevant parties who have a stake in the current way eligibility determinations are made.
Senator Abler.
I feel enlightened, and I'll let somebody else fight that fight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, any other comments about the bill? Or anybody else wish to make comments about the bill? Otherwise, we can.
Madam Chair.
Senator Abler.
Now, closing comment. This is an opportunity that we have as a Senate to bring forth a bill that actually recognizes the will of the Senate in some of the ways to do program integrity and deal with the fraud. It's too bad it's clogged up with nursing home cuts. That is really going to be a clinker that I think that we will regret. If they go true, we'll regret it, but they're not going to hold up in the end anyway. And so I encourage the two leads on this project to bear in mind that we have literally now 12 days to pass the bill. We can't go past midnight on Sunday, a week from Sunday. And the more that we can keep in mind, we're not going to be driven by what the House wants, but to bear in mind the realities of that. There's a lot of good stuff in here that we want to get done. And I think if we can continue to move toward consensus in a collaborative way, as we have in many ways have done on this bill today, I think we'll have a product. And I think if we push it too far toward some kind of a commentary or what we wish could be true, we're going to wind up with an empty bucket. And I don't think either of the chairs here want that. So I'm happy to be a part of that. And and there's some things we're still working on and many more ideas to come. And so some things, Madam Chair, in this large amendment are simply going to be unworkable and just not in the consensus place. And so in the window of my room, I have a Venn diagram. There's a yellow circle and a blue circle, and in the middle is green. And if we can find a way to move this to green before it leaves the Senate and we can get a strong vote, then that'll be helpful. If it's a very closely divided vote with some of the clinkers that are still in there, that will not serve anything that we're after. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments? Senator Mohammed.
Madam Chair, I just want to take a moment. I said this morning to thank our nonpartisan staff and our other staff as well, Haley, Anna, Sam, I know, and Olivia have been working since last night at 11 p.m. and our nonpartisan staff all around the clock. And I just want to thank them because it's really important. Often we bring amendments to this committee just to withdraw it at the expense of them. And I'm just really grateful for the work that they've done.
Thank you. Any other comments on this direction? No, Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody, for being flexible. We still got a lot of work to do, and let's just keep focused on why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you. And so the process will be that we will, the amendments that we, in the informal vote were accepted will be incorporated into the delete everything at the next, at its next stop. And so we will also continue discussion on items that weren't included, and if there is feedback on specific items. I am open to hearing from stakeholders about ways that you'd like to see the bill improve, and we will continue to make sure that we have a strong bill going forward that addresses key needs and will be something that we can negotiate with the House. So appreciate Senator Abler.
Are we going to vote on the sort of package or not really?
Senator Abler, no, we're not going to take a final vote on this. That was the process, was to take these amendments up, discuss them, decide whether they would be kind of move forward with it, and those will be incorporated, as I just said, in the delete everything.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify. So I want to get to a yes on this. Right now I'm not, just so you know. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, members, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.